Hey, it's Saul with another video. Are Protection Paladins okay? Are we fine? Are we good? Do we need a bottle or something? Today I'm going to talk about the only class, the only spec that I play, a Protection Paladin. And I'm going to present a question that's been asked to me a number of times, as in, how are we doing? Are they viable in a raid? Are they fun to play? You know, that sort of thing. As our family of tanks has grown since Legion, where does this shield-toting, light-bearing paladin stand against its other damaged, spongy counterparts? In a nutshell, yeah, we're okay. We have our strengths and weaknesses, our utilities are powerful in one encounter and useless in another. Our health pool kind of sucks, but our mitigation is great, but our uptime, not so much. Within the question of if we're okay or not, there isn't a detailed answer I can give with confidence, unfortunately. This is especially because of my perspective. I raid on heroic difficulty with a casual guild with these types of healers, or sometimes it's these healers and sometimes these, sometimes the raid size is different from this fight to this fight, and well, I think you get the idea. So here's what I'm going to do. In this video, I'm going to try to illustrate just how okay this class and spec is by dropping a few anecdotes for every encounter in Antorus, the Burning Throne. This is obviously going to be very different from my previous Protection Paladin-centric raid guides because it's going to be in very short form and it's going to assume that you know the basics of each fight. From there, decide for yourself. Do you think that we're okay? Are the methods I'm describing too easy, too hard, confusing? I'd love to hear your input on this video because if it sucks, then I'm not going to do it again. If it's awesome, I'll try to do this sort of retrospective more in the future. Here's my profile. I run with a 4-piece bonus, and for pretty much every fight, I use Tyleka's Legs and the Soul of the High Lord Ring. For talents, I use Blessed Hammer, First Avenger, Fist of Justice, Blessing of Spell Warding, Hand of the Protector, Judgment of Light, and Righteous Protector. I can change things up depending on the encounter type, but for the most part, I ran with these for progression. I'll point out alternate choices throughout the video where it's applicable. So let's get started. Siegebreaker. Pretty standard fight, just don't stand in the swirlies if they're close to you, don't stand in that big wide beam thing, just don't stand in any green stuff under you. During the tank swap, when the bombardment comes, you can do one of several things. One is you run away, save run speed cooldowns for this to get a good distance and dodge the blasts. You can also use spell immunity with Blessing of Spell Warding or Divine Shield. Just run off to a free side next to the boss, wait 3 or so seconds after the raid warning is announced, pop your ability, and just keep doing damage. Like I said, you don't have to do this, you can spec for Cavalier instead and keep running away. When the boss does its big AoE exploding thing after you destroy each weapon, just hang out. It's not a big deal, use your active mitigation right before the cast completes, and then just rinse and repeat. For the dogs, I tank the purple one. It's pretty critical to have your active mitigation up for each and every one of the Devouring Maw attacks that it does. Make sure that it's facing away from the raid, of course, but this will be annoying because of the Consuming Sphere that it uses from time to time. If you have DBM, keep an eye out for a Siphon Corruption. Sometimes it lines up with Devouring Maw, so if you use your active mitigation too early, you might be left open. For Weight of Darkness, use this handy-dandy Divine Shield macro in case you get feared, so you can recover quickly and not mess up the raid positioning. If you get feared more than once though, then yell at your team, because it's probably their fault you got feared. For Portal Keeper, I tank every gate, so I pick up the boss first. When tanking the boss downstairs, as I call it, keep an eye for stuff on the ground, and reposition the boss on top of those transport portals to help bring the adds down. This is a good time to use something like Eye of Tyr to help bring the adds down a little bit faster, or Arcane Torrent to control them. Keep an eye on the boss's HP before it reaches the HP thresholds at 90, 60, and 30%. Make sure that you're holding on to the boss at that time, so that way your co-tank won't have any debuff stacks when you leave them for portals. You can handle a few extra stacks, you're an adult, probably. For the orange portal, keep your interrupts ready so you can help out with the cast. It'll die fast enough that you don't need to worry too much about doing burst DPS, I just help keep the interrupts going. For any of these portals, it might be a good idea to save your DPS cooldowns here too. It just depends on how your team is looking. For the second portal, make sure everyone's stacked and just roll your face on the keyboard until the ad is dead. But feel free to switch to the web target if you need to. For the third portal, my team tends to use Bloodlust. Once again, just pick up the ad and hold on to it until it's dead. For IMONAR, I start here, and then I go here, and then I go back up here. Then I go back here and probably Bloodlust. Then I go back up here, I throw a shield at those bats, and then I tank whatever's around me until the fight's over. On to High Command. We have the boss in this position facing this direction for consistency. Just have your active mitigation up for each of the boss's major attacks, and also have your Avenger shield ready to throw just as adds appear and chuck it preferably at the Pyromancer. When you're not tanking, pop 4 of the mines total, 2 at a time, and that'll give you enough to go back to the boss once it wears off, and basically keep up that sequence until the boss is dead. For IMONAR, or is it MNR? I'm not sure. Anyway, you pull the boss and you tank swap. You don't really need to move the boss, you can just have the team move around you and the other tank instead. During the transition, save your cooldowns to help your team if and when they make mistakes. So things like Lay on Hands, Busting a Spell Warding, Hand of the Protector, any of those. When you cross back, same thing, but just keep a better eye out. Chances are someone's going to make a mistake. In the last phase, hold on to the boss till you have 4 stacks, let the other tank have the boss up to 6 stacks, and just try to even out the stacks because these stacks will not expire. On to King GAROTHI. Mark yourself, and maybe your team will see you and not get hammered in the face. Whenever you're not tanking, try to intercept those purple balls when you're far away from the team, and then laugh at how much it tickles. If you have charges for your active mitigation, hit the boss and then run into a ball to feel even cooler. Raid damage here is as predictable as those balls that are flying around, so use your Hand of the Protector on your raid whenever it's possible. Use your active mitigation for each hammer. You normally tank swap for every hammer, but sometimes you won't, so definitely make sure you have a charge for every single hammer, even if it's not your turn. Your DPS does help a little bit here, so I use the following for each initialize phase. Avenging Wrath, then Bloodlust, then Avenging Wrath plus my second potion, then whatever I have left, and then Panic. VARIMATHRAS. This right here is how my team and I are positioned. Before the boss uses Shadow Strike, use your Hand of the Protector to have your HP as high as possible, and then use your active mitigation. Ta-da! Sometimes this lines up closely with Dark Fisher, but he'll always do Dark Fisher first, just like the dogs. In that case, wait a few seconds until the cast is completed, and then pop your active mitigation. As soon as the Misery debuff is applied to your co-tank, taunt right away. Any extra melee hits you two take are potentially fatal. Repeat the sequence and try to stay awake. It'll actually help to watch your raid scramble around like crazy people. Actually, it's why I positioned myself here, so I can watch. Coven. I start off with the Mother of Flames. Face this one away from the raid and use your active mitigation for the second and third flame attacks, cause they hurt. This is the only boss out of the 3 that necessitates a tank swap. The Mother of Shadow just does those dagger knockbacks, no big deal. Face it away from the raid and you can worry less about them. Mid-fight, when the Mother of Frost and Shadow are up, tank the Mother of Frost and just hold on to her. Use your active mitigation for each and every one of her flash freezes, and use Blessing of Freedom every 5 stacks or so. For each Torment of the Titans, I tend to not move a whole lot at all, so the raid has less to think about when it comes to possible flame swipes or shadow daggers or any of that stuff. The safety pool tends to spawn here frequently too. So for Amonthul, switch to the target next to you and use DPS cooldowns to kill it quickly, and then leave your raid to just do the rest. For GAROTHI, you don't need to move much at all, just cleave your ad down. For Golganeth, definitely don't move. You'll probably kill someone on your team, but it'll be kind of funny because they'll die, and you won't. For Norganon, when the images spawn, pop Blessing a Spell Warding and just run to the other side, and then wait and hope that the rest of your team survives. If you don't have Spell Warding, you can use Divine Shield too, just be sure to taunt your boss while running through and then turn off Divine Shield once you're good. Now for AGGRAMAR. Mark both yourself and your co-tank so melee know where not to be. You're always going to have a trick to use for Foebreaker. It might vary slightly depending on what legendaries and relic traits you use to influence the cooldowns of your defensive abilities. Regardless though, you'll be using the following for each Foebreaker: Ardent Defender, Eye of Tyr with your active mitigation, Guardian of the Ancient Kings, and so on. Your healers are going to be working overtime for this fight. If you're not having too much trouble staying alive, switch to Siren's Resolve for the double heal and give them some support. Spell Warding can help them out too. And finally, Arcus. The scythe looks cool and it opens up freaking space, so you can imagine that it hurts. Have your active mitigation available to cover every scythe after the first one. For Soul Bomb, make sure your HP is topped off and that your Divine Steed is off cooldown. There's no reason that it should be yet to this point. You can use Blessing a Spell Warding here, but it doesn't really serve a lot of use. During Phase 3 with the Constellars, I take the ad with a two-handed sword when they first appear. This is so I can be in the middle, and then help out every now and then with interrupting Cosmic Beacon regardless of where they are. During the final phase, there are 2 points where you should either let yourself die right away, or to live as long as possible, and that's shortly after the ads are killed. This is so that one of you tanks can help catch the motes in the spirit world while your team stays alive and continues killing the boss. Hand of the Protector works on the tree while it's dying. It won't be all that effective, but it can help if more than a few healers are down. And that's about it. Here's some side commentary. Stat-wise, I'm sort of high up there with a 960 plus item level, but I'm not optimized for anything in particular, mostly because of rotten luck. I have only about 20% haste, which some would consider low. Unfortunately, it's a bit hard to get away from all that crit gear I end up getting. Trinket-wise, I'm using the Pantheon Tanking Trinket along with the Rift World Codex, a crit trinket that can be pretty unpredictable with its procs, but throughout this tier, it's been a pretty reliable damage smoother overall. I already have a decent number of defensive cooldowns as it is, so having something like the Codex makes for a pretty big contributor to overall healing to myself, depending on the fight of course. So that's all I've got to say, and hopefully this video was of some use or answered a few questions that you have. If you do have other general questions about Paladin tanking or have comments to make about this video, please leave one below. If this video sucked, I don't want to waste our time with this format in the future, so your feedback will be greatly appreciated. If you liked it though and want to see more though, then please like this video and subscribe for more of this and all things Warcraft. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay breezy.